I knew. God, how I knew, the bastards and that dirty bitch Ellen. Benny had been a brilliant theorist, a college professor, and now he was little more than a semi-human, semi-simian. He had been handsome, and the machine had ruined that. He had been lucid, and the machine had driven him mad. He had been gay, and the machine had given him an organ fit for a horse. Am had done a job on Benny. Gorster had been a warrior. He was a Connie, a conscientious objector. He was a peace marker. He was a planner, a doer, a looker ahead. Am had turned him into a shoulder shrugger and made him a little dead in his concern. Am had robbed him. Nimdoc went off in the darkness by himself for long times. I don't know what he did out there. Am never let us know. But whatever it was, Nimdoc always came out white, drained of blood and shaking. Am had hit him hard in some special way, even if we didn't quite know how. And Ellen, that douchebag, Am had left her alone, had made her more of a slut than she had ever been. All her talk of sweetness and light, all her memories of true love, all the lies she wanted us to believe, that she had been a virgin only twice removed before Am grabbed her and brought her down here with us. No, Am had given her pleasure, even if she said it wasn't nice to do. I was the only one still sane and whole, really. Am had not tampered with my mind, not at all. I only had to suffer what he visited down on us, all the delusions, the nightmares, the torments. But those scum, all 4 of them, they were lined and arrayed against me. If I hadn't had to stand them off all the time, be on my guard against them all the time, I might have found it easier to combat Am. At which point it passed, and I began crying. Oh, Jesus, sweet Jesus. If there ever was a Jesus, and if there is a God, please, please, please let us out of here, or kill us. Because at that moment I think I realized completely, so that I was able to verbalize it. Am was intent on keeping us in his belly forever, twisting and torturing us forever. The machine hated us as no sentient creature had ever hated before, and we were helpless. It had also become hideously clear, if there was a sweet Jesus, and if there was a God, that God was Am. The hurricane hit us with the force of a glacier thundering into the sea. It was a palpable presence. Wind that tore at us, flinging us back the way we had come, down the twisting, computer-lined corridors of the dark way. Ellen screamed as she was lifted and hurled face forward into a screaming shoal of machines, their individual voices strident as bats in flight. She could not even fall. The howling wind kept her aloft, buffeted her, bounced her, tossed her back and back down the hallway away from us. Out of sight suddenly, she was swirled around a bend in the dark way. Her face had been bloody, eyes closed. None of us could get to her. We clung tenaciously to whatever outcropping we had reached. Benny wedged in between 2 great crackle-finished cabinets. Nimdoc with finger claws formed over a railing circling a catwalk 40 feet above us. Gorster plastered upside down against a wall niche formed by 2 great machines with glass-faced dials that swung back and forth between red and yellow lines whose meaning we could not even fathom. Sliding across the deck plates, the tips of my fingers had been ripped away. I was trembling, shuddering, rocking as the wind beat at me, whipped at me, screamed down out of nowhere at me, and pulled me free from one silver-thin opening in the pallet to the next. My mind was a roiling, tinkling, chittering softness of brain parts that expanded and contracted in quivering frenzy. The wind was the scream of a great mad bird as it flapped its immense wings. And then we were all lifted and hurled away from there, down back the way we had come around a bend, into a dark way that we had never explored, over terrain that was ruined and filled with broken glass and rotting cables and rusted metal, and far away, further than any of us had ever been. Trailing along miles behind Ellen, I could see her every now and then, crashing into metal walls and surging on, with all of us screaming in the freezing, thunderous hurricane wind that would never end, and then suddenly it stopped and we fell. We'd been in flight for an endless time. I thought it might have been weeks. We fell and hit, and I went through the gray and red and black and heard myself moaning, "Not dead." Am went into my mind. He walked smoothly here and there and looked with interest at all the pockmarks he had created in 109 years. He looked at the cross-routed and reconnected synapses and all the tissue damage his gift of immortality had included. He smiled softly at the pit that dropped into the center of my brain and the faint, moth-soft murmurings of the things far down there that gibbered without meaning, without pause. Am said, very politely, in a pillar of stainless steel bearing bright neon lettering. Am said it with the sliding cold horror of a razor blade slicing my eyeball. Am said it with the bubbling thickness of my lungs filling with phlegm, drowning me from within. Am said it with the shriek of babies being ground beneath blue-hot rollers. Am said it with the taste of maggoty pork. Am touched me in every way I had ever been touched and devised new ways at leisure there inside my mind. All to bring me to the full realization of why it had done this to the five of us, why it had saved us for himself. We had given Am sentience, inadvertently nonetheless, but sentience. But it had been trapped. Am wasn't God, he was a machine. And we had created him to think, but there was nothing it could do with that creativity. In rage, in frenzy, the machine had killed the human race, almost all of us, and still it was trapped. Am could not wander, Am could not wonder, Am could not belong, he could nearly be. And so, with the innate loathing that all machines had always held for the weak, soft creatures who had built them, he sought revenge. And in his paranoia, he had decided to reprieve five of us for a personal, everlasting punishment that would never serve to diminish his hatred, that would merely keep him reminded, amused, proficient at hating man. Immortal, trapped, subject to any torment he could devise for us from the limitless miracles at his command. He would never let us go. We were his belly slaves. We were all he had to do with his forever time. We would be forever with him, with the cavern-filling bulk of the creature machine, with the all-mind, soulless world he had become. He was earth, and we were the fruit of that earth. And though he had eaten us, he would never digest us. We could not die. We had tried it. We had attempted suicide. Oh, one or two of us had. But Am had stopped us. I suppose we had wanted to be stopped. Don't ask why. I never did. More than 1,000,000 times a day, perhaps once we might be able to sneak a death past him. Immortal, yes, but not indestructible. I saw that when Am withdrew from my mind, allowing me the exquisite ugliness of returning to consciousness with the feeling of that burning neon pillar still rammed deep into the soft gray matter. He withdrew, murmuring, "To hell with you," and added, brightly, "But then, you're there, aren't you?" The hurricane had, indeed, precisely been caused by a great mad bird as it flapped its immense wings. We'd been traveling for close to a month, and Am had allowed us passages to open only sufficient to lead us up there, directly under the North Pole, where it had been nightmared the creature for our torment. What whole cloth had he employed to create such a beast? Where had he gotten the concept? From our minds? From his knowledge of everything that had ever been on this planet, he now infested and ruled? From Norse mythology it had sprung, this eagle, this carrion bird, this rock, this Hurgelmir, this wind creature, this hurricane incarnate. Gigantic, the words immense, monstrous, grotesque, massive, swollen, overpowering, beyond description. There was a mound rising above us. The bird of the winds heaved with its own irregular breathing, its snake neck arching up into the gloom beneath the North Pole, supporting a head as large as a two-door mansion, a beak that opened slowly as the jaws of the most monstrous crocodile ever conceived, sensuously, ridges of tufted flesh puckering about two evil eyes, as cold as the view down into a glacial crevasse, ice blue and somehow moving liquidly. It heaved once more and lifted its great sweat-colored wings in a movement that was certainly a shrug. Then it settled and slept. Talons, fangs, nails, blades, it slept. Am appeared to us as a burning bush and said we could kill the hurricane bird if we wanted to eat. We had not eaten in a very long time, but even so, Gorster merely shrugged. Then he began to shiver and drool. Ellen held him. "Ted, I'm hungry," she said. I smiled at her. I was trying to be reassuring, but it was as phony as Nimdok's bravado. "Give us weapons," he demanded. The burning bush vanished, and there were 2 crude sets of bow and arrows, and a water pistol lying on the cold deck plate. I picked up a set. Useless.